Welcome to Mr. Sinister's Nightmares.
I always loved being the last to leave school. The echoes bouncing off the vacant hallways, the sense of solitude, it was freeing. But something was different that evening. As the debate club meeting ended, the old grandfather clock in the foyer chimed 7 times. A storm began to rage outside. I secured my things and started down the hallway, only to be met by Mr. Harmon, our school janitor. "Sorry, kid. Lockdown's in place. Huge storm and some downed trees have blocked all the roads. It's not safe." Alone in the school, I tried to reassure myself. Just another adventure, I thought. I decided to camp in the library, my fortress of solitude it would seem. The endless tales contained within its walls usually comforted me. But that night they seemed haunting. A flicker of light caught my eye from the corner of the library. Out the corner of my eye, I saw another student. But when I looked over, he was gone. I started to go over and take a closer look, but suddenly he appeared right in front of me, flickering like an old TV station fighting to hold a signal. From what I could tell, this was Ben. But it couldn't be. Ben died in a freak accident last winter. I froze in my steps, heart hammering in my chest. "This isn't real," I mumbled. Then he spoke. "Help me," he implored, his eyes filled with torment. I was shocked. It was hard to even speak. But I focused just hard enough to get out the few words I could. "How can I help?" "Find my letter. Locker 206. Only you can see me. Only you can help." Then he slowly vanished, like fading smoke exposed to a slight wind, leaving me alone with my terror. With a rush of adrenaline, I sprinted to locker 206. Fumbling with the rusty lock, my hands finally began to function, and the lock sprung open. Inside there was a single envelope. The front read, "To whom it may concern." I took it and headed back to the library, reading it under the dim light. The letter was an admission of despair. Benjamin confessed to feeling isolated and hopeless, voicing thoughts of ending his own life. The last line read, "If you're reading this, it's too late for me, but not for others. Make them listen." A heaviness settled in my chest. The echoes of Benjamin's struggles struck many nerves all throughout my body. It was an eerie awakening, the horrors of loneliness and despair confronting me more terrifyingly than any ghost could. Suddenly the school PA system crackled and was given life. A voice that could have been Ben's, but it was distorted and otherworldly, echoed, "Make them listen." With newfound resolve, I knew what I had to do. I sat at the library computer, digitizing Ben's letter. I uploaded it to the school's social media accounts, the local news sites and other platforms. I wouldn't let Ben's plea go unheard. Hours later, dawn broke. The lockdown was lifted and students trickled in. Whispers about the chilling post started to spread. Teachers were discussing it. The principal made an assembly. As I walked down the same halls, the whispers weren't just the eerie remnants of an empty school. They were whispers of understanding, concern, and a collective resolve to never let anyone feel like Ben felt. It was later reported that many students reached out for help, inspired by Ben's letter. His ghost never reappeared, and I like to think it's because he found some peace. That terrifying night in the school brought a silent horror into the light. We were forced to confront the demons hiding in plain sight, the demons of our own making. It was the longest night of my life, but it changed our school forever. Our understanding of horror broadened, became more real. Looking back, I realized that the most fearsome spectres are not always those that lurk in shadows. Sometimes they exist in the silence of ignored pleas and overlooked pain, and sometimes it takes a lockdown, a storm, and an old friend to learn that.
It was March 1942, in the heart of World War II. But our school campus was quiet, located in a plain old town in Pennsylvania, far away from the front lines. The war seemed like an echo, a distant rumble, until one day, the shrill sound of the air raid siren suddenly split the air, bringing everyone in our school to a standstill. Our teacher, Mrs. Elridge, face as white as chalk, instructed us to head to the basement, the designated shelter during the drills we ran for this moment, hoping it would never actually arrive. As we descended into the gloomy depths, confusion gave way to anxiety. We had run drills before, but this was different. This was real. I heard whispers among the teachers about a possible chemical attack. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird against a cage. The basement was repurposed as a makeshift bunker, cold and dank, filled with long shadows. The dim lighting flickered ominously, casting grotesque shapes onto the stone walls. And this is where I would have to somehow get comfortable. It was a far better alternative to what awaited us outside. Hours turned into days as we huddled together, our lives suspended in a dreadful limbo. The air grew stale and heavy, filled with the aura of fear and dread. The staff tried to keep us calm, organizing games, lessons, anything to distract from the reality above. One night, sleep for me was just out of reach. I glanced over and noticed Mrs. Elridge speaking in hushed tones with the janitor, Mr. O'Reilly. Their expressions haunted me, filled with a foreboding sourness that lingered in the pit of my stomach. The next morning, we awoke to a terrifying reality. Several students had fallen ill overnight, their faces gaunt, eyes hollow, and skin an unnatural shade of gray. Their breath came in ragged gasps, and they writhed in their makeshift beds. Our nurse, her face masked, moved among them, her eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. Whispers of chemical exposure began to circulate, filling the air with a tangible dread. Panic set in like a contagion, spreading faster than the sickness that was picking us off, one by one. I remained unscathed, a spectator to the unfolding horror, but my heart ached for my friends. I looked around at the familiar faces now marked with terror. The walls that had once been a sanctuary now felt like a prison. On the 5th day of the lockdown, things took a sinister turn. Our water supply, stored in massive tanks, ran disturbingly low, and then the lights started flickering more than usual, plunging the basement into terrifying rounds of darkness. The atmosphere was thick with terror, only made worse by subtle sobbing and the whispers of prayers. That night, a thunderous crash echoed throughout the basement, followed by a terrifying silence. In the lingering vibrations, I recognized the sound, our only link to the outside world. The radio had stopped. The already grim faces of our teachers now seemed to sink further, their eyes reflecting a helpless despair. Paranoia crept among us. Rumors whispered in the dark suggested the enemy had found us and we were under a siege. A terrifying thought of dying in this cold, dark basement haunted my every waking moment. At the peak of our despair, a miracle happened. A group of seniors, led by George, the school quarterback, hatched a plan to escape. They mapped the old sewage system from memory, planning to use it to venture outside. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying, filled with uncertainty and danger, but it was a glimmer of hope in our hopeless situation. I decided to join them. The night of our escape, the air was heavy with anticipation. Our heartbeats sounded like war drums in the echoing silence. We crawled through the ancient tunnels, guided by dim flashlights and sheer determination. After what felt like hours, we emerged into the cool night. The campus was eerily silent, cloaked in darkness, the buildings standing like grim sentinels. We stumbled towards the gates. The taste of freedom was so close. Suddenly, piercing the silence, came a low growl. In the dim light, I could see shadowy figures emerging from the surrounding woods, moving in an unnerving, disjointed manner. In the distance, there seemed to be men in what looked like lab coats looking on. The horrifying realization struck us. The chemical attack hadn't been from an enemy. It had been a test, a cruel experiment, and we were the lab rats. We stood, frozen in terror, as the once familiar townsfolk, their bodies grotesque and distorted, moved towards us. We turned and fled back towards the dreaded basement. The school grounds, once a symbol of safety and knowledge, was now a haunted landscape. So here we are back in the basement, our situation more desperate than ever. As I pen down our tale, I can hear them outside, scratching and groaning, an endless reminder of our grim fate. The war, it seems, has truly come home.